first, we're going to keep this really informal, so if you've been here before and I give you a little spiel, I'm going to cut that really short today. I have this is our new poster for our lecture series, and I just wanted to say next week we have Goat Island. We'll be doing a lecture performance with 7 performers reading from a new piece that they were creating every day of this year. So we'll be doing the whole month of February. Next Monday night here in the lecture hall, and then following that, they'll be giving a workshop on Tuesday and Wednesday following the lecture that they give here, and this is open to all students and faculty. You don't really need to be prepared or bring anything except a piece of paper and a pen, the blue clothing, somebody who's on the space, somebody who's really need to know a little bit more about Rhode Island. We have these flyers in the office, and then we have this poster that I'm supposed to be passing around. So today we have Danielle Gustafson-Sundell and Danielle Larson, and this is the first of a possible series of conversations that we're going to have here in our lecture series, and so we kind of organize it a little more informally. They're going to talk a bit more informally than we might normally do this. And what I want to ask you is, if you have questions at any time during their discussion, please ask. The first slide that Danielle puts up, feel free to ask her a question right away. What we want to do is make this more kind of conversational discussion based. So just a little tiny bit about them. The nice thing about tonight's event is that Danielle went to UIC, graduated in 1996 from the MFA program, so it's always nice for us to have alumni back at the university. Danielle, Danielle is also Chicago educated. She went to Northwestern and graduated in '98. These are 2 women whose work is incredibly similar. They deal with a number of shared interests, but as you'll see as they go through their work, there are some fundamental differences between them. The interesting thing is that they've never been in a show together. So this is kind of nice to see their work together and see some of the corresponding differences. Just a little bit of advertising. Danielle is in a show that's up right now at the Evanston Art Center called Paper Product. It just opened this weekend, runs through like the first week of April. Danielle will be opening a new piece at the MCA in April as well. And Danielle will be opening a new piece at the MCA in June in their 12 by 12 New Artists and Works series. So I'm very happy that they're here, and I think it will be a fun discussion. Please join in and welcome them tonight.
All right, does this sound fine? I'm not used to unnatural wiring. I drew the luck of the draw to go first, and I'm a bringer of way too many slides. And Danielle and I decided that we were going to start with like one brief or early grad school, and I'm going to show grad school, and then we'll switch and Danielle will show grad school, and then it'll be post-grad school to the present. So this goes way back, and it's actually, when I entered grad school, this is pre-grad school, I think it was part of my actual package to get into grad school. I studied painting, and these sort of soft abstractions is where I started. Then the funny, weird thing is that I have no slides from my first year of grad school, and I can't remember if I never thought anything was worth documenting or if at a later date I got rid of them all. So there's a weird gap where I was trying to work out a lot of painting issues and having a lot of problems with painting specifically as a medium. I personally couldn't get enough information in it with just paint, and the history of paint really freaked me out. I couldn't figure out how to get the things I was interested in into it all. So after the first year of grad school, I threw out everything and repainted my studio and just started bringing in stuff. And the first, this first one, I'm still pretty attached to, you know, an abstract painting language, but I'm trying to introduce more materials. And it rapidly escalates into these construction pieces out of AstroTurf and yarn, and they're they're coming off the wall too, so they're getting a little bit more of a sculptural thing going on. But still, I think, they're really contained by, formal painting language. But I am getting more interested in what sort of information the materials bring. Like what happens if you make something out of astroturf? It's got this whole other set of references. And I hit this one, which was about body shape. It hung so that that top part is about neck height, and then there's that weird head shape, and it had this weird tongue that kind of stuck out from it. And I always thought about it as a sculpture to make out with, but I wasn't quite ready to deal with that content, so I don't think I ever was upfront about that these specific body references and metaphors and emotional content, I couldn't figure out a way to sort of rectify that or talk about it. And I started making these funky little weird fetish objects. It's always weird when you go back and look, because I look at these and I'm like, wow, you were looking at a lot of Richard Tuttle, or you look and you can see people that you were thinking about more specifically than I can now. These little balloon sort of organ kind of shapes. And then I hit one of the first of the bricks I was to make. This one was called Stiff Upper Lip, and I stretched the pantyhose over this brick and realized that there was something really wonderful about something that's all torn up and defaced and imperfect and awkward and not beautiful, and that I had to repair this thing, and that those were really loaded metaphors to use. And also just the fact that this thing could only stand if it was nailed to the wall, I really thought that was pretty great too. It's a weird slide though. These are you have to bear with my really ugly first slides too, all shot in my studio. Another weird little, some of them got really overtly, I think a banana and an orange is pretty silly now, but at the time it seemed like a really good body reference. But I'm also interested in how to use the things that we think are really cliche when we talk about the body and love. This was important to me. A lot of these don't have titles either up until this point. I'm really interested in language, and it's something Danielle and I have talked about, is that we both have to work on a lot, is working from a position where sometimes I find a phrase and I find that really interesting, and how do you make the thing do what the words are doing, or how pop songs do that so fantastically. Pop songs are so on key when it comes to talking about certain things. And it's harder to get an object to do them. And my grandma had sent me this really ugly crocheted hat with a pom-pom, and I took it apart and stitched it around this old cement block that was in my studio. And the pairings of opposites, the hard concrete thing with this thing that was handmade and loved, and someone had made especially for me, sort of remaking that. And again, how the entirety of the thing referenced sort of emotional place and was a surrogate for the body. After that piece, I started making some other smaller brick pieces. This was called Gifted. And again, I think I cut up a crochet someone had given me and made that into the bow for the gift. Another brick piece from that time called Flat as a Board. We were talking about this, we did this run through this other day, and I was thinking just about how incredibly stupid I think this piece is now. And at the time it seemed really clever to sort of have the brick so specifically reference a body. And I was thinking about those, that old, that old saying, girls play at some parties, light as a feather, heavy as a board.
Yeah.
It kind of came from that title and the idea of being flat-chested, flat as a board. And sometimes I think with language and cliches, it's sometimes flat-footed is great, and sometimes it's just too stupid. And this one sort of exists in a too stupid land for me, but kind of important at the same time to think about. I made a window installation, and throughout this whole time I'm thinking a lot about these materials. And I stitched this imperfect grid, and I nailed a whole bunch of, I nailed a framework around my window, and this was all thread and parchment paper cut into these small circles, and it was this really fluttery, fragile thing. And I worked for hours on it, and then the window was open and the wind came and wrecked it immediately. It had no lasting power. And there was something about that completely disappeared, like poignancy about that moment that wouldn't have worked with any other materials. And that's another thing that I wrestled with, again, coming out of a painting tradition where it's like, you know, paint this thing right and it lasts and this whole kind of history. And then to make things that absolutely don't last rather purposefully was a big, I don't know, sort of a big art issue for me to think about.
And were you going back and forth from making work like that and the bricks?
Yeah, at the same time. So there's like this total concrete, forever lasting heavy stuff, and then this sort of, I think the main thing that connects them is like the handmade quality, and they still have a fragility, like even all the bricks, I think, have been shifted over into being sort of fragile. This is one of my favorites. I mean, yeah, grad school is all over the place, which I think is showing a little bit with trying to like work out a lot of different art ideas. And with this one, I was interested in like, and I was also thinking about how you can take things from the world and make them mean something else, which I'm still really interested in, like how you can take this thing and not just a contextual shift, but also like force a meaning on it and make that thing mean what you say it means. And with this one, I just called it two brushes, but in my head it was always two brushes fucking, which is like really, again, flat-footed and obvious, right? So, you know, it never needed the adjective to tell you what they were doing. But they were also tethered together, so there was a lot of things about not just the fucking part, but I think a love thing too, permanently attached. And I did a few pieces like that from things I found in the world. I'm just showing this piece because it's interesting to me that the whole time, the holdover, like things that I learned from painting about color and what color can do, and I still think of myself a lot of times as someone coming straight out of painting or using a painting language. And so this is towards the end of grad school, and some of these constructions were just so overwrought, I think. You know, like there was little things that they just didn't need certain things. And I found like the place where the yarn dripped down to the floor and there's sort of this red nylon puddle on the floor was like it. It was like what the whole thing was about, but I'm still trying to over make it, you know, like make it do, I don't know, some sort of grander idea of what this thing could do when like succinctly the moment is right there on the floor. And then these big colorful sort of installation pieces with swimming pool tarp and fabric. And again, it was another moment where I realized that this, the brick that's here, tethered from the blue to the floor, is so much more interesting than the whole thing. You know, like this orange brick, again, it's from a hat my grandma made me. She made me this safety orange crocheted hat. And I sewed it around a brick, and it had everything that it needed. You know, it had the pairings of opposites, and it transmitted a lot of weird energy, I think, because of like the past history of the fabric and the me re-obsessively sewing it, that it didn't need all the other stuff. So rather painfully, I'm like, you know, editing myself for being able to see the, like the moments that are good. And this is my studio towards the end of grad school. A lot of, you know, multi-constructions of different materials. This front piece is called Love, I Love You. It was these two vague, you know, vaguely figural forms that had been shellacked together, or like totally polyurethane together, even though it was this attempt to make something permanent that was impermanent. They were just made out of brown craft paper that I'd stuffed with doll stuffing and wrapped up and tied up, and then they were clipped together at what I thought of as their heads at the top of the two of them. So it was, I don't know, it sounds a little cynical, this whole wrapped up and clipped thing, but it wasn't really meant to be cynical. And I think we hit Danielle now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually starting with a couple of pieces from undergrad, going way back to I was a photo major. So it actually I started grad school here as a photo major, but I ended up transferring and restarting in studio art. So, but this is sort of the beginning of me taking photographs and making something else out of them. I have a detail of it. And what it is it's images of flames printed on paper, and the paper is folded into boxes, tiny little, it was titled light boxes. So, and this is the other piece from undergrad. This piece was called Mating, and this is my thesis show, part of what I used to get in here. And what it was is these were images of fireflies that I had printed off a computer, like manipulated, in Photoshop, and then wrapped the paper inside the jars and then wired them all. So all the lights were working together. They were all connected. So, okay, and this is the first piece I made in grad school. This piece is titled The Way We Were, and it's roughly like bed size. I don't know the exact dimensions. And what this is it's artificial flowers that have been suspended in hair gel and then sealed in plastic bags. And they sat on top of basically a big light box. And this piece is called Joy Hole. And this was my first like real room installation that I did. This is from 93. And when you walked in the room, there was a hole that was placed at crotch level, and a bubble machine was behind there, and the bubbles shot out like directly at you. It was directly facing the door. So, and it was green, and there was green carpet, and there was sort of a nasty little puddle of bubbles that had accumulated on the floor after time. And this piece, it's a bad piece that I made in grad school. It's a really bad piece. This is called Love Seat, and it was made out of cotton balls and baby powder, and it was completely disgusting, like smelled like really, really sweet. And in the center, there was this bubbling Pepto-Bismol, like hole that my thinking was that if you got too close, you would fall in the Pepto-Bismol. So this is like, I think, basically my work's all of my work, I should just say that it's all sort of about the idea of love and romance and how that actually works in real life. So like the fairy tale version and the real life version, so. And this is a detail. I don't have the actual, I couldn't find a good slide of the actual piece, but it's a 14-foot long by 4-foot drawing. And it's just rows and rows and rows of tiny little hearts that I drew. And the piece is called Just Another Notch in My Belt. And it was sort of, what Danielle was talking about, language. It was taking this language of, it's like a term that you don't normally hear women use very often. You hear men use it, and it's like, just another notch in my belt. Where this was sort of turning that around, and actually it was a very painstaking process of, say, losing someone that you were with or whatever, a loved one. Not losing a loved one, but a failed relationship, I should say. This piece is a weird piece. We talked about this during our run-through. This is called Poof, a Fairy Chamber. And this piece is really about believing in something, which is not unrelated to my ideas about love, but it's a little bit askew, I think. And I built this as sort of, it's kind of like a confessional type of size. It's built for one person. There's a little chair that you can sit on with moss, and the idea behind this piece was that if you believed enough and if you needed them enough, like the fairies would come and they would help you with your problems, and it was all about believing in them, making them come, so. And this piece is called Forget It. It's made out of cast Pepto-Bismol. I have a detail. They're flowers that I cast in Pepto-Bismol, and then I arranged them on a puddle of, it's actually pink paint. And really for this piece to work, I think it would have had to be like a site-specific sort of installation, which it wasn't. It was on a piece of wood and as an object rather than as an actual puddle. But that's how I would have liked to have done it. And this is called the Abominable Snowball. And this is my height in diameter. So it's a giant ball of artificial flowers, and then the flowers are covered with artificial snow. So it's supposed to be like this frozen moment. And this piece is really about the moment where everything, like when you're in love and everything's so great and beautiful and wonderful. It's about trying to freeze that moment, which is obviously impossible, and it wouldn't be good if you could anyway. And also I was thinking about the myth of Sisyphus with this piece, this giant boulder, this sort of giant obstacle that you keep having to try to go through for eternity. That's a detail of it. And this piece is titled Veil, and this is the outside of the piece. And again, this is sort of more, it's designed for one person. There were 2 video monitors inside, and on the video monitor on the left is I'm running. It's an endurance piece that I'm running. I have a wireless mic hooked up to me, and I'm running back and forth in a skateboarding bowl. And what happens with the other tape, which is all taken from like found skateboarding videos that I edited them so that when I stopped to rest, the guys that were skating would start to wipe out. And bail is, I mean, you guys probably, I don't know, if people don't know, it's a term used in skateboarding where if you're gonna fall and wipe out, you can bail out so that you don't get terribly hurt. In this piece, I think I was thinking a lot about, I mean, it was at a time when rave culture seemed very popular, as well as like cyber sex and all that stuff started coming into play. And it was about like this sort of mating dance or ritual that was happening through video. So they're totally separate monitors and, you know, separate things, but they're still controlling one another. And this piece is called Tunnel of Love. And this is a 12-foot long, it's like 12-foot long hallway basically. When you walk in, there was strawberry scented fog that came out of the walls and strobe lights in there, so it was really, really disorienting for the 12 feet that you walk through it. And again, this is about like that moment of sort of time, space, everything disappearing because you're so in love with someone or something, so. And this piece is titled Gift. And this, again, is it's my dimension, I mean, it's my height, and it's my width dimensions if I'm standing with my hands on my hips. It's right? It's covered in fake fur, fake leopardskin fur, and then it has a big bow on top. And the idea behind this was how much, I was thinking about like how much can you actually give yourself to someone? Like how wholly can you do that? You know, like the possibility of that. So. And this piece is titled Gene, More to Him Than I Can Ever Be. And this is about the weight that like a stuffed animal could have on someone. This is someone's first stuffed animal ever. And I was thinking about, I blew it up. She's like roughly my size. So it's a really large photograph, even though the animal's only this big. But it's sort of about trying to take over that history. Like I could never have that history with this person. I have to make my own. So it's sort of about giving into that, not being everything to somebody. And this piece is titled Bump. This was my thesis show when I graduated from school here. And there are 2 Swan bumper cars that were pedal activated. So if you have a slide of people in them, and you could ride them around Gallery 400, and they were bumper cars. So that was it. So, Shane.
All right. So then it's post-grad school, and I moved my studio to my apartment, and everything gets a lot more, quite literally, domesticated. And I'm still thinking a lot about that, things that are handmade and how much weight they carry. And I was really interested in like Mike Kelly writing about like things that are handmade. Like if someone gives you something that's handmade, it's just loaded up with so much, you can never get rid of it, and you can't, even if you don't like it, you have to hold the sweater for a year until you feel like you can throw it away. Like all those issues of like when something's so loaded up with the hand, and it was back to my grandmother's pom-poms or the hats or the really ill-fitting sweaters that she mailed me. And the pom-poms seemed a very sweet, weird sort of way to, I don't know, transmit sweetness in the homemade. And I started putting them over kitchen things around my house. Kitchen mat, colander, which is like one of my favorite ones. And one thing about this, when we were talking about the differences in our work, is that I still think from coming out of a painting background that I work really serially. You know, like if I try something once, I have to try it like 8 times. Like so there's like these repetitions of things, and me trying to find where it works the best, or maybe there should be 10 of them, or like trying to shift that way of working over into these objects. And at the same time, I start making these other more elaborate bricks, which I worked on they were a big part of my production in the past few years, were these bricks. Each one is individual, and some of them have a little bit more specific. This one was called Pow, and there was the little sort of cartoony Pow area. And this one was called Candy O's. And it was really interesting to me how they could sort of cross over from, they were painting, they were 3-dimensional painting. They were also sculpture, and they took up space in the room. They also referenced really familiar things, like obviously being made out of bricks, but also the fact that in the 70s, everyone made these door stops, like applique door stops out of these, the same thing. So they kind of I liked the way they were able to slide over into all these different places. And another thing I found really interesting is that people really wanted to touch them. Like there was something about their color and their softness and their scale in relationship to the body, our body, physical body, that you want to pick them up and hold them. And some of the bricks where I actually stitched through the holes in the bricks, it was so weird because people would pick them up and stick their fingers in the holes. And it was just like, that is so great and so weird. So a lot of that reaction informed other things I was going to make. At the same time, I'm making all these small weird things. Again, I made this big weird sculpture called Guts, because it sort of looked intestinal. And it was made out of craft paper stuffed with doll fabric, and the whole thing was staple gunned together, so it was always bursting at the seams. And I had to repair it constantly. Like, it was never done because it always needed repairs. And there was something really hilarious about this self-imploding thing. Here's a weird detail of it. It was just tied up. And I'm also making these small, I call them small paper sculptures. And they were little tiny scraps of paper. All of these are about like a, I don't know, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch high. And they were fold-ups and cutouts from all these little circles I was using for another project. And I took each single one and like elaborately hand-stitched every single seam. And then I would set them up in these little conversations to myself. It was one of those like things you do in your studio that generate some other ideas. And I always was making up like the pink one sort of got a crush on the blue one, and the blue one is a lot more smushed than the other one, so the pink one will never like the blue one, or the opposite for that slide actually. Or sometimes there'll just be these lonely little solo ones. And they were just a way of thinking about constructing a narrative about relationships. The bricks I ended up installing at a show called Stuff. And the whole time I've been making them, I never ever thought about like what they would do in the world. Like, is it okay if it just sits on someone's desk? Or maybe it's okay if it's a doorstop? Or how they could be like out in the world and not look like I try to lay too much art language or like art structure on them. Like, I really didn't want that. So we spent a lot of time placing them around casually, like they've just been set there, which is a really funny thing to try to do purposefully. And I also took the pom-poms and they were developed into what was called the Pom-Pom Project. And I tied handmade pom-poms that were color coordinated to match every single object I tied them to. I was trying to remember the other day how many. I think there was over like 100 different things that had these color-coded pom-poms on them. And the best thing about this project to me was that all the art happened in places where the art wasn't supposed to happen. There was not one pom-pom in the gallery specifically. It was like the elevator when you were coming up, or I think behind the receptionist desk was the closest it got to the actual gallery space, and in the closets and in the bathrooms. And they were just something that if you saw them, and if you didn't, you didn't. And that was I really liked that whole idea too. Just this thing that if you just catch it, maybe you're sort of lucky or you're curious. Then I shipped into trying to make the language of what I'm thinking about with the objects really work. And this is called Lump with an Empire Waist. And it weighs a ton. It's just this heavy, ugly lump with this pretty sewn belt around. So there's this, again, pairing of like ugly, pretty, awkward, maybe smart and stupid. All the opposites I could think of. Another sweater sleeve that's been patched. It's on a mailing tube. I spent a winter working on this piece, which was called Butterfly Net to Catch Myself. And I constructed this huge net made out of handmade cutout paper butterflies out of construction paper. And I found some patterns for butterflies. And I strung them together with kitchen thread. And again, it was one of these like wonderfully failed things because I didn't, there's certain things about like, sculpture that I'm really leery of, like things that sculptures do, like drape or hang, or like an Ava Hess sort of like thing. And with my work, I thought that was like a dangerous territory to lean towards. And so, why? I guess, well, part of it's just familiarity. Like, I know it too well. And when I see it, I know it really well. And I think...
That presentation?
Yeah, that sort of presentation. Or just that the thing is dependent on it doing that. I feel is so, just too familiar.
Just over.
And also, maybe, that's a really long gender conversation, but also just maybe too over in a land that I get a little nervous about, or I feel like isn't tough enough. Like if I want to talk about like love and emotions, I want the things to be really tough in some ways. Does that make sense? I think it's my relationship to it is even complicated, I think.
So you read those great things as defeated? The meaning that you're getting out of it?
Yeah, maybe defeated, or just like, you just know it too well. Like there's certain painting language too, you look at it and you're like, oh, I know it. Like I don't know what new could be transmitted through it. Like it's got this end wall sort of that it hits. And so with this net, which was like this big form, like when it was like hanging out and draped in space, it was just annoying. It's like, I don't want to walk underneath a net. Like it was too literal, and I liked it better when it's just like this ugly heap on the floor. But one thing about it that was great too is that the way I tied it all together, it was always ripping and falling apart, so I would bandage it back together. So it's like, it has this constant process of me having to take care of it. There's another detail of those, but so then this is getting really close. This is pretty present. This is about 2 years ago. This piece is called Pink in Between, and it's about my crotch level, I guess, is about where the stacks of brick hit. And I guess this is sort of like what I mean. Like I feel like this piece is just like sort of like a resolute form, but it kind of is able to talk about sex and the body and those sorts of things, but in a way that just isn't as predictable, maybe, to me, hopefully. And another piece from that time where I cut out a big pattern about the size of my body, and it was this reconstructed piece of fabric that I'd taken from a big rectangle, and almost like I was trying to construct, a shirt or something. It was called The Special Place, and it had this little highlighted pink nub with a safety pin. And another thing I'm interested in is like the full thing, like when you see the full thing, and then when you get up close, there's some like small detail, so that there's a backwards like a step back relationship to this thing, and then an up close relationship to this thing. So this little tiny hot pink nub, or the special place, was something you could only see if you're on top of it. And another cement block piece, the second after Pink in Between. This one was called Soft Yellow Insides, and the front floor piece is called Untitled Hotspots. And Untitled Hotspots is 2 boards wrapped in pink velour, propped up on a brick. And the hotspots kind of hit about, stomach to crotch level, depending on your height. And again, I was trying to think about specifically referencing the body, but also this desire issue, because you want to, the velour is very strokeable and soft and pink, and then the hot spots continue around to the other side. So there's this thing that it continues, but you can't see it and you can't touch it, and you want to roll it over or flip it over. A detail of all the pink felt for pink in between and soft yellow insides were all connected. All the tubes are connected with safety pins, and I love safety pins for their fashion and punk rock references, and also just sort of like using what's at hand. It's just like the easiest way to make these things attach. Another detail. This piece is called, it looks so big, like Stonehenge, but it's really small. It's called The Prettiest One. And I think that explains itself. This is called Red Hot Middle. And I spent another winter, I love these cold winters for these projects, cutting out thousands of little tiny circles from fashion magazines. Sometimes the glossy backgrounds, but sometimes the reds and the pinks of clothes, and hoping to make them sort of squish together to make this sort of like hot interior love ball. This is called I Used to Love You. It's just two of those little glass deck blocks with this sewn applique on the top. And when you're standing above it and you look down, the bullseye of the target is completed in between the glass. And I was thinking a lot about how you can love a lot of different people throughout the course of your lifetime. And sometimes you look back and you sort of make fun of that love, but at the time, it was really huge, and it's not unreal, but love sort of seems not real. And you sort of squish these things into this interior space and protect them, even though it still sort of radiates. Or you can have another. This is called the Up and Over. Little tiny mirrors applique to felt. It's a really small piece. It's like, I think it's only like, I don't know, not even 2 feet long, and only like that wood box only like 3 inches high. And I liked this because when anybody looks down, because you have to look down, and then all you see is like fractions of yourself right back at you. And it seemed to set up this pretty intimate relationship with me and someone looking at it. Soft and Cool Love, a chain that's nailed to the wall, and I threaded little strips of felt from the base down, and again, it's just got this one, one spot that's different from all the others. And just the materials, the chain being, the cool, and sort of tempted to be made soft with this material. I did another batch of bricks called, Bullseye, almost but not close. And they were sort of like these little bikini G-string cover-up things for, I don't know how many, like 25 bricks. They were all different. And some of them had like little leather thong things, and some had kitchen string. It just depended. This is Untitled Zippers. That's apologies for the ugly slide, but it's, I don't know how many zippers. I never count anything, although I use multiples. It's just never been very important, the number of them. I don't know, over one summer I was totally fascinated with, I was looking at these old pictures from this really cheesy book called Earthworks, and it had all these great images of all those guys standing out in the desert with their construction hats on, like moving earth, and there was this line that said, like, bulldozers and earth were the main materials used to make this piece, and it just cracked me up. And I thought about it all summer about how I love all that work, but I don't know what to do with it sometimes, and it still seems, really like, kind of like nerdy macho to me. So I wanted to sort of make my own zipper spiral jetty. And it was all these really great colors of zippers, real faded and kind of like Girl Scout colors. And I just stapled them together, and it changes shape and dimensions wherever it goes. A small wall piece, silver reflective cardboard circles stitched to a piece of Tyvek, and it hangs about head height, so when you're standing in front of it, it's framed at sort of an average head, and it's called My Stitched Self. Corner slit with stars. I took apart an old favorite sweater of mine, and I was thinking about, I mean, I love riffing off of other work. You know, it's too great to be able to sort of riff off of some piece. And there was that Gober piece, which title I don't know, where the legs come out of the wall. You know that piece where, like, I always feel like the wall sort of becomes the spread open crotch, or, you know, like there's this like implied weird thing about the room and the body. So I wanted to sort of think about the corner as a slit or a crotch, and it has these little glittery stars up the middle. This is, now we're up to last fall. This is the show in the project room at Vedanta called Love Hole. This is just, I think there's like 2 shots of the different pieces. And then this piece is called Love Hole. It's a tin can perched in the middle of these boards. There's a detail. Follows in line, I think, with, you know, the course of these slides so far. But a couple of things I really like about this piece still is that it was sort of gender neutral in a way, maybe. Like, you know, like it's a whole, and it's also a physical whole, but it's also an emotional whole. Like a love whole doesn't just, you know, have to be a body part whole, but it could be another kind of whole. And I like the relationship it has to the viewer, because you have to walk up in between its spread boards and like look down into this hole. This is called Miss 69, a pair of blue jeans with a little orgasmy rays. I was looking at a lot of 70s applique. That stuff is so great. It's just, I love those free love art years. And it's made out of a pair of Miss 60 jeans, which are like these designer jeans that really only fit if you weigh 90 pounds and have these really trashy ads. So it was kind of nicely, I think, smooshed together. One perfect iron-on moment is sort of deconstructed, sort of sewn painting space, and it's really a wreck. And the only, you know, like the one moment of beauty is not real. It's just like those iron-on flowers for your blue jeans. What is this title? I'm spacing it out, sorry. It's Corduroy Old Sweater Big Pole. Again, riffing on some art history, and at the same time, within the context of the other work, I love how I feel the pole got loaded up, you know, with its relationship to this, my cut up sweater and these safety pins. There's a great like sort of insertion thing happening. And this piece was called, Dear Pirate, My Heart is a Moon. And I was starting to think all the other work seemed a little bit too like, I don't know, like hard or one-off, so I wanted to make a really, really sweet piece to sort of juxtapose with that. And I was thinking about pirate banners and sort of like conquering or, you know, taking over things, and that sort of, I don't know, this weird tequila sunrise idea of love, you know, like this cheesy, like 2 parrot lovebirds heart thing. And this is called Everlasting Gobstopper Love. It's a little longer than body height, and it's multicolored felt rolls that I sliced in half and stitched, sort of pushed up and smooshed next together. And I thought they looked like the inside of an everlasting gobstopper. This was the other little side project room. The piece on the wall is a paper piece called Real Shiny Homemade Tears, and the one on the bottom is called Patchwork Bulge. And again, another winter spent cutting out small hologram tears, and a detail of the patchwork bulge, which is, I wish I had a detail of the behind too, because it's really great when its butt sort of squishes out from behind these blocks. And I really, there's something really, you know, curious about like unzipping, the possibility of unzipping a sculpture. All right, back to Danielle.
Okay, so this is post-grad school, and this piece is, I did a series of these fireworks pieces, and yeah, can you hear me now? Should I move this closer? Can everybody else hear me? Yeah? Okay, so this is, what it is, it's a metal structure. This one actually fit into the corner of a room, and it was covered with tiny little rhinestones. And then I did these little sparkler pieces that I was thinking of as little sort of, kisses or moments that had been dropped to the floor. When you hold a sparkler and drop it to the floor. And this piece is called Almost Paradise. It's a 40-foot long wave that was designed basically to go in the space. There was a 40-foot wall that it faced. It was in 5 sections, 5 8-foot long sections. And it was basically, that's the edge of it, so you can see it's a wave. And I was really starting to deal more, I think, here with spatial relationships with the viewer. And when you were in the room, it was sort of like this giant empty room with this piece pushed up against the wall, placing you in the ocean. That was what I had intended for it to do. You weren't like on the beach, you were in the ocean. So you were in the thick of it, And this piece is called Soft, and I took all the right angles out of the room, out of the gallery. So it was a big, empty, white gallery with no corners, which had a really strange effect because it was like a, perceptual trick that happened because you couldn't really focus on anything. There were no angles to focus on. This piece is called Sometimes Love Is Not Enough, and this is I have another ribbon piece, but this was the first one that I did, and it's curled silver ribbon that the package ribbon that I just curled and made this pile of. I have a detail of this, and this piece was really about working really, really hard at something, and you just end up with a big pile of stuff. This piece is called The Space Between Us, and this is coming up. This is I think this is from 2000. Yeah. And basically I did this installation in 2 rooms. It was sort of a weird setup where I showed this piece, and there were 2 rooms, and I wanted to sort of join the spaces together somehow, even though they were separate. And I hung there's sequins that I had strung on fishing line. There were like 800 strands of them, like 7 feet in length. And there was a path that you could walk through. There was like a determined path that I set that was pretty much for one person. In the first room, there was just like one way to go, and then when you got into the second room, it was sort of like a little square, like almost like a water, when you go into a public square and there's like a waterfall or something inside. So there were the sequins inside, and then you had to if you were in there with more than one person, you sort of had to negotiate either to go the same way as them or to somehow get around them. And this piece was, again, like sort of about love and destiny and how which way your path, how predetermined is it or whatever. So, and this piece is called, it's the same, it's sequins again, but I've actually joined them together to sort of make this piece is called Boundary, and it's sort of a wall, it's sort of a dividing wall that hung in the space, and it's also mirrored reflective, so when you looked at it, you saw yourself or whoever else was in there. I have a detail of that. It's just all these strung sequins and glued together. And I did this is a smaller one of those. This is also called Boundary. And again, this was sort of about like the walls we put up and, how close can you actually be to someone, and made this reflection on the wall and sort of mirror. It's like similar to Danielle's, the window piece. Yeah, it's like similar to that. There's a detail of that. And this is the next ribbon piece, which is much more positive, I think. And this one is called 100 Miles for You in Caribbean Blue. And this is 100 miles of ribbon that I, curled as well. And it's a bigger pile, and I think it's a happier pile. Her pile was kind of sad. This piece, these are little rhinestones that are glued to the wall, and the title is 2,125 Days with You, and it's a rhinestone for each day that I've been with my boyfriend. Now it's longer, but at the opening, that was how many days. So again, this is about like these moments, like sort of savoring these moments, you know. So, and this is my most recent work. It's an installation shot. The title of the show was Forever Ever, and they're photographs and resin bricks that I made. I pretty much made everything from those little sweetheart candies with the, you know, messages, the conversation hearts. And the photographs are, I'll just flip through a couple details. Like, it's the white ground up candy, which then I sort of molded then to look, I wanted it to look like beach. Like close-ups of little beaches where people have been or not been, or wind, or it's sort of this whole romantic notion of, you know, the beach, the ocean, paradise. This is the yellow, and then here's a few of the walls. So I just mixed. I used the powdered candy as pigment, essentially. So that's it.
Want lights on or lights off?
Lights on. Yeah.
Wait. That hurts.
So nobody really asked any questions while they were talking, but maybe we can ask some questions now. Any other questions?
That was a lot of
Thought.
stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff.
I'm just curious, how many parts, or how many pounds of parts?
I ended up using like 120 pounds. It's quite a few.
It's a lot of candy hearts.
Yeah, a lot of candy. Are you talking to me? Yeah. I do.
I haven't. I actually, like the piece that I just built for the Evanston Art Center, it was the first time where I was really like, this is so stupid to try to do by myself. But I'm too control freaky, and I stitch everything together, and I know, like there's no way I could have someone else do it in the same way. I keep trying to think of ways to use someone, but it would just be slide organization, you know, or like desk stuff and paperwork.
We were talking a little bit about that when we were talking about your process, and that you,
Right.
Danielle, was saying that you have maybe not so much now because you're a little bit more able to conceptualize things, but that you use lots of different materials in your studio and just kind of like put things together and
Right.
go through them, whereas Danielle, you had a different
Yeah, I sort
way
of
of working.
don't start a project till I'm absolutely sure of what I'm doing, because they do tend to be bigger and
Right.
more expensive and more time consuming, I think. I mean, I do a little bit of that, but you do more playing, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Which is nice, you know.
pretty much get in the studio all the time and just am trying to mix things up. Although, for a while I was just like, I was a lot more like material dependent. Like I, would go out and look for materials that were doing a specific thing, or like maybe with another material, they would do it. And over the past couple of years, I found that, I can think of a piece and make it. So it's like, now it's become like a little bit of both, but it also just depends on project-wise. Like once you know, like you have a space and you've written this proposal and it's going to go there, it's like, it leaves less room for like studio messing around, sort of, or like, oh wait, I'll just work till that moment, I'll bring it all there. It's like the process is a lot more formalized in some ways. So it's asked of me that, I don't know, that it sort of flips and I can like get it all on paper and know what I'm going to use. So it's a little bit both, but still not.
Yeah, I think it's true, though. I think mine is both as well now,
Yeah.
more so than it was maybe with older work, but
Right.
maybe a little bit more controlled than you
Yeah.
are. So, but I do experiment in my studio, definitely, and I edit a lot. There's a lot of ideas that I don't ever end up making because I end up thinking they're stupid, or, you know.
Stupid idea.
Right. So,
And when we were talking before about titles, what was there was some kind of also kind of difference
Difference
between
in that.
starting and
Oh yeah, because you were saying that you actually start sometimes with the title,
Yeah.
whereas I don't think I do. It's so hard to like remember where you are, like where your brain is when you're making
know.
work.
But I keep lists of words, and I keep lists
Right.
of phrases everywhere, more so than I do anything else, just the language of them. And if the language is doing what I want it to do, then it's, a lot of times it's a matter of just finding the things that can then do that, or bump up against that in a way. So yeah, the language relationship is funny. Because sometimes, like, the thing is like, here's what you have to call me. And
Right.
sometimes, you start with that to try to work with. I have a whole like index of like cool phrases that I swear I'm going to use, but I have to get to.
I was just wondering, since you're not newly out of graduate school, but some people find that transition really hard. And I just wondered whether each of you could have, any advice to people that are just getting ready, because, one of the things is you've always got people hovering over you who may be totally influencing
Right.
what you're doing, and then as you talk about the time thing,
Right.
there's never really time, you don't have a lot of time to say that's a failure.
Right.
So I just, maybe you can talk about, a little bit. the
Um,
differences.
It was hard for me. It was a really hard transition. I think I actually ended up taking like an entire year where I didn't make anything. And that, it sort of took that and making me realize how miserable I was not making anything. So I was like, I have to get a job, and then that was dumb. That was like my dumb idea, where I was like, and also I lived in New York for a little while, and that my work sort of shrank because I didn't have time, I didn't have space. So they're all sort of issues that I don't know, I think you just kind of figure it out, but it's hard. Also having deadlines, when you're in school you have set deadlines, which is great. You have to finish things, so.
I remember, it was interesting, so many people go to New York, and some people, it's the best thing they did, some
Right.
people end up just working to live in New York.
Right.
So it was interesting for you to have gone to New York and then decided that you really wanted to live here.
Yeah, it
That
was
was
just-
a very interesting decision.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good decision for me. I don't know what I would be. It wasn't possible for me to, because I don't have money that I needed to live there and to make work there and to have space there. And I guess also at the point that I was done with graduate school, I was sort of, I was making kind of expensive work when I was here. And to go back from that, it was difficult. I was I had the luxury of living in Chicago, which is sort of very livable and reasonable. And then I was like, I can't afford to do anything that I want to do. No more credit cards. No more on my credit cards, so.
No wood shop.
Right, exactly. It's just
there's-
space,
I think the space and facility thing is like crushing for making things.
Yeah.
And the downscaling. I think trying to figure out where you're going to do this thing from then on. It's really, I think that's the toughest. I didn't have a studio or a work freak out. A little bit of floundering, but not a bad, just because personality-wise, I'm too addicted to the studio. So getting in there is not an issue, or getting distracted is not an issue. But I had a community freak out. It's all of a sudden you're not talking about work all the time, and you have to figure out how you're going to make that happen again. If you can teach, that's great. You can have the dialogue sort of with students, but you have to figure out a way to find other people to hang out with, or get them over to your studio, or it's just this empty void. And I know a lot of people that had have had, I've been out of school for 4 years, so most of my friends are about that same time, that had just a hellish 2 years. It's just horrible. They got out and they got a crappy unrelated job with that MFA, and people scatter and they can't figure out how to keep a consistent production going on, or discussion or anything. So it all becomes this fantasy art magazine lifestyle, which I think is the weirdest part. So I don't know. It was just, I put together a couple shows, and that was one way to really sort of jump over that was to curate, was to like put some shows together. So you just have to cold call artists whose work you like and get over being nervous about like introducing yourself to people or.
You formed, and you've also formed.
Yeah, Deluxe Projects
so
since then.
That was maybe your way also.
Yeah, that totally. Deluxe Projects, the project space I run with 3 other artists in Chicago totally came out of that. We all met at a show and had liked each other's work, and it just was having conversations. And the first show we threw was actually all our work. It was a typical, rent a space and show your own work kind of thing. And it was such a good experience. Like, it was so great hanging out and talking and working on things that we decided to rent a space on a full lease. Now we're at the end of our 2nd year, but it's rocky, but it's still good. And it keeps it going because you're working with other artists and they bring in this work with all these ideas you haven't thought about, and the 4 of us get to argue all the time about what we think is good or what we think we should show. So that, I think, keeps it exciting also.
Right. I think that's also just going out and looking at work and going to openings and sort of keeping somewhat of that community thing is really important. Or it was to me to because I feel like I stopped for a while and then it was like I felt totally disconnected to everyone and the whole art world, but then eventually came back.
There's that play of a sociability that you have to have. And I think you both, you're kind of an interesting thing that's happened in Chicago. There's, I think, a little more interest in people beginning. There's like a bit of welcoming. There's been galleries that have come in who are interested in newer work. So, and it reminds me of the 70s when it was like the cooperatives, name, Artemisia, all those. But now it's a totally different thing, but it has to do with being proactive with your career. And I was told one time, I think it was James Wood told the story that, and some of you down Westman won't mean anything, but he's a critic, and James Wood said, well, what artists think is that they're going to be working in the studio, and there's going to be a car crash, and it's going to be down the cusp, and he's going to need the phone, and he's got to call. He's going to walk in, and he's going to say, my God, this worked. And then you're going to be famous, and you get this covered.
But a lot of MFA programs run under that sort of feel, like high production values, like for that 2 years or 3 years. Just this level of seriousness, which is great, but it also builds up this mythic thing about the post experience. I have lots of friends that went to like really high-powered MFA programs, and I swear they expected someone to knock on the door for that phone call to ring, just out of the blue, thing. I think it's really stupid and dangerous, to what you can. It's like a long, I want to do this forever, pretty much. It's not just about that mythic telephone call, which I think is, a good practical thing to realize, and a lot of people don't realize it. I don't think. Hot in here, huh?
The heat was not on this morning.
It wasn't? Oh my God.
About any other questions? Well, thanks, you guys.
Thank you.